Welcome back. This tutorial is going to be on animating the warp blades, lights, and the flashing lights on our ship. If you enjoyed these tutorials or find them helpful, then please remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to be notified when I post new tutorials. Alright, I have already fired up Blender and loaded my tutorial, and I think you guys already know I have things stratified in different layers. So first layer contains most of my ship. The second layer, however, contains most of my lights. And if you, so I've got my lights in the back of the engineering hull back here. Right, I changed that. All right, so let's do here. You can see the two lights here for the hull, my lights on either side of my saucer, and of course the warp lights themselves, including these tiny little lights up here. And my third, this is going to be real important because we're going to start with something like this today, is the warp blades. Now, I think where I left you, they were a single object. Both of these, if you clicked on one, you clicked on the other because it was mirrored. So what you need to do is you need to go to your modifiers and you need to apply your mirror modifier. If you don't remember, let's see here. I'm going to add a plane. And let's go to 3, scale down. All right, so we have a plane. I'm going to grab my plane, move it over here, and here's the center where it came from. And what I want to do is I'm going to create a mirror modifier. So here we go. Here's mirror. I want it in the Y direction. Why is that not working? Oh. Oh dear. Let's just make that invisible. Not that we were seeing it anyway. I completely forgot. Shift. Oh, boy. Not doing real well today. Shift. Control Alt C. We're going to do origin to the 3D cursor. So our object now thinks it starts here and ends here. Okay, great. When we pull up a mirror modifier, normally it has X selected, so we're going to unselect X and pick Y. So we've got two things. They are mirrored just like our warp engine blades here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply, and now I've got a single object. So if I grab one of these, they both move, okay? We don't want that. So you would grab one of your sets of blades like I'm going to do here. I'm going to tab into this, A to deselect. I'm going to hit B and select one of these items. So you would be doing it with one of these sets of fan blades. And then you would hit the letter P and pick selection. So now you've got one item here and one item here. Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. And now you've got, in theory, two of these warp blades. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here where I've got this set up. These are just two warp blades. Notice my cursor, my 3D cursor is over here. And the origin for each of these is probably sitting here on your model as well. So I can duplicate that. All right, so my origin, this little orange dot, is right at my 3D cursor and not here on my warp blades. So I'm going to change that. Just pick your warp blades. Okay, so now they're highlighted. Shift, Control, Alt, C, origin to geometry, and that'll put it kind of in the middle. But at least it's centered. If we go to 3, our orange dot is right in the middle. And that's good. That's a good thing. So I'm going to hit Tab. And I think normally you'll see it everything is selected. So A to deselect, and I'm going to just click one of the vertices right in the middle of everything here. That's close enough. Tab out, and Shift, Control, Alt, C. Oh, actually, hang on. Shift S, cursor to selected. So instead of actually, oh, it actually went to that. That's interesting. So tab 3. I've got this one vert right in the center. Shift S, cursor to selected, and now the 3D cursor is right in the center of this blade thing. And tab out, Shift, Control, Alt, C, and we're going to do origin to 3D cursor. Okay, so it jumped from the middle of the object to right here, which is in the center, where we picked our one vertex, right? And we've also got the 3D cursor there. This is going to be handy because we want to rotate around something. And if you have the origin and the 3D cursor right in the center of all the blades, it makes it easy to rotate. All right. First thing to do is we got to figure out how many frames you want to render. So if you're going to make a movie, the number of frames controls and the frame rate controls how long your movie is going to be. So now, if you're doing things at television frame rates, which is 29.97 frames per second, that's essentially 30 frames a second. So I'm going to clear that. And I've got selected, for whatever reason, for some scene I was doing, I have 450 frames. Divided by 30 equals 15 seconds. All right, so we can make a 15-second video with this. It doesn't matter. So long as we've got more than 10, we'll be able to make this work. All right. So now come down here and make sure that this is set to 1, not 2, not 0, 1. That's your starting frame for most everything. And we're going to start animating. Now, you can use this for automatic keyframing and such, but I don't want to do the whole scene. I just want to animate this one set of blades. So I'm going to hit, we're going to take this as a starting position. I'm going to pick I, and I'm going to pick rotation. So I is to insert something into our animation, and what we do is we insert essentially a keyframe. A keyframe would be, so each of these numbers down at the bottom represents one frame, or one of the 30 frames per second. And a key is telling the software what you want it to do at that particular frame. All right, so that's a step in the right direction. We've told it that we want it to rotate and that it's going to start here. All right, so now I'm going to use that 30 idea, and I'm going to hit 30, go to my 30th frame. You'll see we've leapt from 1 to 30 here. All right, great. But nothing has happened here. We haven't told it what to do yet. So now we can pick either bounding box center or 3D cursor. I'm going to pick 3D cursor for the moment. And I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. All right, so it's spun until the blade that was here is now over here, and it did it around the 3D cursor, which is situated right in the center of our modeled blades. Okay, great. Now we want I, and we want rotation again. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. We've done animation before, and you know it's going to start off slow, speed up, and then end slow again. So let's watch. Okay, it did that. It spun once. And just to make sure, we've got two separate objects here. Only the one on the left spun for 30 frames. Okay, great. But it's sped up and then slowed down. We don't want that to happen. We want it to be consistent. So now, I normally have you hit Control left arrow twice. And it'll do. I should figure out a way to put these both on the same screen. But right now, so what is this actually? This is Graph Editor. Okay, well, we can do this. Hang on. I'm going to split this in half from top to bottom. Okay, great. Down here on the bottom, we're going to pick Graph Editor. Okay, cool. So now we can see what we are editing here, and we see what happens down here. We've got our keyframes, and we've got 30 whole frames here, and it speeds up and slows down. Well, first we're going to go to Key, Interpolation mode, and we're going to tell it linear. So now this is different. Let's watch. It's steady, all 30 frames. It spins exactly the same rate all the way through. And that's a good start. But now we want, let's see, which one's the right one? I'm trying to remember. Hang on. I know I've done this. Hang on, let me think. Oh, got it. Oh, that was giving me a rough way to go. Go to Channel and Extrapolation mode. Extrapolate means to take some information and then from that information predict in the future, make a prediction for the future. So what I want, I think, is, let's try linear extrapolation. So we made it linear in the first place, so now it's moving at a steady rate in a circle. It's spinning, and I want to do linear extrapolation. So now, when we last watched this, it lasted for 30 whole seconds. We've gone beyond 30 whole seconds, and it remembers what we did. It's every 30 frames, it's rotating 90 degrees, and it's not stopping. Okay, cool. Now, so I like my starboard warp engine to spin clockwise. And I like my port warp engine to spin counterclockwise. But that's me. You can have them spinning in the same direction clockwise, spinning in the same direction counterclockwise. You can have like I do, the starboard one spinning clockwise, the port one spinning counterclockwise, or the opposite. The starboard one spinning counterclockwise and the port one spinning clockwise. You can find evidence for any one of these spins if you watch enough episodes. There are different spins and different spin rates in different episodes. But to make things simple for me, and because I like these counter-rotating blades, I'm going to do the exact opposite over here. So the first part is, of course, just like what we did before, I'm going to tab into this. If everything is selected, deselect. I'm going to pick a vertex right in the middle. So I've got one highlighted. I'm going to Shift S, cursor to selected. Okay, great. Tab out, Shift Control Alt C. I'm going to move my origin, basically what this thing thinks of as its center, to the very middle of the very front of this set of fan blades. Okay, and tab out. So now we've got this object selected. The cursor is in the center. We've still got cursor select, and we are back at frame number 1. If we're not, hit back and go to frame number 1. We're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to do I, rotation. Then we're going to go to frame 30. I'm going to rotate negative 90 degrees. Enter. I, rotation. Okay, great. Key, interpolation mode, linear. And then we want it to extrapolate into the future in a linear mode, linear extrapolation. Okay, great. So now I'm going to go back to 1. I'm going to recenter. And we're going to look at both of our warp engines here. They're spinning counterclockwise at the exact same rate of speed. They're doing it in a linear fashion that is the same speed for every frame. This is great. So we've got, and because we've told it to extrapolate, to keep going into the future, these blades will spin for as long as our scene is. I know that I've selected 450, but if I made a 3-hour movie of watching the Enterprise from the front, it would spin at that same rate for all 3 movies. Now, the only time this is going to be a problem is if you want to increase the speed of the warp blades, but that's subject for another day. All right, so we've got our warp blades. Time to move on. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to leave this here. All right, now I've got my lights here. And if we go to rendered mode, great. And if I hit play, oh, I've already got some animated. All right, doesn't matter. All right, now we've got lights all over the place, right? We've got lights in our warp engines, lights on top and bottom on the sides of our saucer, tiny little lights on both sides of the saucer, 2 lights all the way in the back of the engineering section, and we've even got 2 steady lights on either side of the bridge. All right, so first things first. These lights here, these tiny little lights on the sides of the saucer, I don't think they blink. And neither do these tiny little lights on top of the warp engines, nor do the tiny little lights on the sides of the bridge. So I created a light that I called non-flashing light, right? Non-flashing light saucer and non-flashing light for the bridge. And strength is 3. All right, let's see here. What have I got here? Non-flashing light for the saucer, and I've got it set to 1. I don't know why 1. Let's go to 3, just like on the bridge. And they'll quite possibly show up inside our housing. All right, so those are done. We're not going to do anything more with those because they don't flash. Sadly, what I do have here is I've got flashing lights. Oh dear. I wanted to show you how to do that. All right, first off, this top and bottom set of flashing lights on either side of the saucer flash about once per second. So they turn on, they turn off, they stay off briefly, they turn on again. And that period from on to off before you go on again is, let's call it 30 frames. What's different is the warp engine lights blink at a different rate. They're a little more similar to these flashing lights here in the back. So I'm going to show you how to do these are done too. Great. I'm going to create a light to show you how to make it flash. Sorry. All right. So back to my empty spaces. Shift A. I'm going to make a light. It's going to be a UV sphere. I'm going to scale that sucker down. All right, cool. I'm going to grab this and move it here. All right. So let's say this is one of these flashing lights. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab flashing light zone. No, I'm not. I'm going to make a new one. All right. All right, so I'm going to make a flashing light. Okay, so material, you hit plus. We've already selected cycles render, or at least I hope you have, up here. All right. Oh, and I don't want this. I want wireframe for now. Or better yet, material. Okay, material shows nothing. It's just essentially blank. I mean, I've hit plus over here, so it gave me kind of a flat white material. I'm going to make this smooth. All right. And because we're doing the same thing as these flashing lights here and here, I'm going to leave this white. But we don't want diffuse. We want a mix shader. All right, so I've got a mix shader, but I haven't picked any types yet. First type we're going to pick is glass. Now, this particular glass I simply want to be transparent, so I'm not going to give it any colors. But down here for the second shader, I'm going to pick emission. And what the heck? Let's make this emission of 5. So it's fairly bright. All right. And right now this is set halfway between glass and emission. So if I go to 1, it's totally on. If I go to 0, it's totally off. Matter of fact, let's change this to make it... Actually, let's change the viewport color. Why isn't that? Well, it doesn't matter. What matters is if I go to rendered, and this is off, and my background is black, this is basically going to be transparent. Okay. In this case, transparent is black because of my black background. I don't have any other lights in the scene or anything like that. If I add a light, and I can certainly add a light, Shift A, lamp, and let's just throw in a sun. It'll start to, you'll start to see it. So there's the sun. It doesn't matter where it is. And the sun's strength is 1. Let's make that 100. All right. So if I go back to rendered, it's still transparent and such, but let's see if we can do better. So I'll get rid of that sun. And let's put in Shift A. Let's put in a either a spot or a hemi. I guess we'll go with a... I can't believe I did that. Let's go with a point. It's over here in that warp engine. I should have centered this up, but whatever. So grab, move this over. And that's already at 100, so that's cool. Go to 3 and rendered. It's reflecting the light source, but whatever. Okay, so you can tell this is not lit. That's kind of the point. Get rid of this. I don't need it. Pardon my hiccup. All right, so that's off. So in order to animate this, I want to go to something simple and easy to understand. So I'm going to hit 1. I'm going to set this back to material. So you'll notice, remember, the way I've got this set up, 0 is off, 1 is on. So now, I want this on for kind of the majority, but I also want the cycle to last 30 seconds. And if I'm doing any renders, I'm probably going to do render with, at frame number 1 if I'm going to use this model. Or I can always set up another model where all the lights are lit and use that for renders and then come back to this. So it doesn't matter how you do this. What matters is coming up with a way to kind of mechanically reproduce the flashing that you want. So I'm going to start with this on. So what did we learn before? And we're going to do a keyframe, but we don't do it here. What we do is we come over here. Now, believe it or not, this factor can actually be animated. So I'm putting my cursor over the factor, and I'm hitting I to insert at frame 1. So it now knows that's supposed to be on. I'm going to go to frame 10. I'm going to go back here. You'll notice this has gone from yellow to green. I'm going to put my cursor over it again, and I'm going to hit I. So it knows that it's supposed to still be on full. Now I'm going to go to 15. So we're halfway through. I'm going to go to my factor here and turn it to 0. And I'm going to hit I. So now the light is off. So for the first 10 frames, it's on. And then from 10 to 15, it visibly goes from completely on to completely off. Okay, great. I don't want it to be off for too long. Let's go to make it 25. And I'm going to put my cursor over 0 here. I'm going to hit I. Then I'm going to go to 30. Now I want to complete the cycle. So I'm going to take this from 0 to 1 and hit I. Okay. Now, I'm not going to turn this linear. It doesn't matter for this. If it slows down or speeds up, I'm still turning it on certain keyframes and off on certain keyframes. What's important is that it's going to flash once every 30 frames. So I do want to extrapolate, but I don't think I do it here. I don't think it works that way. I'm trying to remember. I gotta think. Oh, yeah. Hang on a second. You go to channel, and you still go to extrapolation mode, but you make cyclic. You turn it into a cycle. So just make cyclic. Aha! Bingo. That's exactly what we wanted. So now, if I sit here and play this, and go back to 1. On, off. Hard to see here. Where it's not going to be hard to see is in rendered mode. So let's go to frame 10. It's still on. Let's go to frame 15. It's off. Go to frame 20. It's off. Frame 25. Still off. Frame 30. Back on. So this will cycle on and off and blink once a second. That's exactly what we want. What I really should have done was I should have pointed out something else seems fairly obvious to me, but it may not be fairly obvious to everybody. Let me get rid of this. Because I want all of these to animate, to cycle in unison, to work together at the same time. What I did was I highlighted, let's go to Z. I highlighted any one of them, and then I hit Shift. Let's try that again. Shift, right mouse click, Shift, right mouse click, and Shift, right mouse click. Okay. Now what you can do is you can hit Control J, turn them all into one object, and then animate them with just the way I showed you. That would be all 4 of them turning on and off at the same time. All right. So that's actually pretty good. So now we've got, if we've done this right, these will flash just like what I was showing you. So on, off, on, off, on, off. Now, did I used emission and transparent. That's the only difference. You can use the glass, you can use the transparent. It shouldn't matter in the slightest. Transparent just makes them disappear. All right. So we've got lights that are lit and they're on all the time. On the sides of the saucer, on the bridge, and on top of the warp engines. So those are just lit all the time. They're on. These 4 lights on the saucer now flash once a second. Once every 30 frames. They turn on and off. And then they turn on and off again for the next second. So 5 seconds of film, 5 flashes. Which isn't bad, but it's kind of slow for some of these others. The warp engines flash at a different rate, and these flash at a different rate as well. Now, we can make that rate about the same, because I'm pretty sure that these were just some kind of Christmas tree lights here and the color lights. These lights in the back, so long as you make them faster than this, then you'll have it just about right. I've counted it out. I think that these flash 3 times per second. So since we've roughly defined a second as 30 frames, you could make sure that these flash on for 5 frames, off for 5 frames, and then make it cyclical. If you don't want them that fast, like I think I made these flash twice a second. So that's not so bad. So that's on for, yeah. So I took 15 seconds and split that. So like 8 seconds on and 7 seconds off, something like that. And then I just made it go on forever. So those flash twice a second. And then we're going to do something similar with the warp engines. So I'm just going to pick warp engine lights. So now, if you, I have not applied my mirror modifier yet to the lights. So any light I select will pick 2 lights. So one on the left and one on the right. So that's fine. That's exactly what I want. Because I'm going to have these animate counter, right? So since this light is mirrored here, if I make them blink in a circle this way, this one's going to blink in a circle the other way because it's the mirror, and that's fine. That's going to work just fine with my warp blades. All right, so now, just to help me keep this straight, I've got my, I guess when I was thinking about it, I started off with the red light up here. So we're gonna pick the red light, and I did something to help me keep track of these turning on and off. So I just did a little Excel spreadsheet, and I have the frame numbers up here and what happens on each of those frames. So, all right, in this case, I'm going to exclusively focus on this warp engine here, the starboard warp engine. So now, if you're unsure what you've picked, Z, and you can see whatever you've highlighted. Okay, so this is rendered. It's on. I'm going to turn off my red light. So I want to go over here to my materials, right? And I have my factor is set at 0. So all of these, 0 is on and 1 is off. So for my first 5 frames, right, I want this to be off. I'm going to turn off the red one, and I'm going to turn off this blue one. Okay, so now pick my red one. I'm going to go over here to factor, and I'm going to hit I. I'm going to go down here to this blue one. I'm going to go over here to hit factor and hit I. Okay, so now I have animated those as off. You know what? I guess we can do all the others in turn. I'm picking this yellow one up here, coming over here to my factor, I, my green one, factor, I, white one, factor, I, and so on. I, I, and we already know I've done my red one. All right, I'm going to go to frame 5. I pick my red one. I, or insert. All right, so they've all been selected. Now I'm going to go to frame 10. Start off with my red one again. I want to take this to 0. So now that's on. Insert keyframe. My green one, I'm going to turn off. So 1, I. My yellow one, I'm going to, or orange, actually that's an orange. Going to select and just hit I. My blue one, I want to turn on. So we're going to go to 0 and I. And we're going to go to this orange one here. I think I want to turn that off. So we're going to go to 1 and I to insert. Okay, cool. So now we've made a change. And now I'm going to go to back to my red one here. We're going to go to frame 15. And ooh, I turned that off again. That's interesting. So I'm going to go to 1, I. Going to go to my green one. That's going to be on now. So 0, I. My orange one is going to be off. So take that to 1, I. Pick my blue one, and that's going to be stay on. So I. My orange one over here is got to go on. So 0, I, and that brings us back to red. Okay, now we're going to go to frame 20. And we're going to turn the red one back on. So 0, I. Green one is now going to be off. I. My orange one is going to be on, so 0, I. My blue one down here is going to be off, so 1, I. And my orange one over here is going to be on, so I. Back to red, and let's go to 25. Okay, so now 25, my red one is on, so I. My green one here is on, I. My orange one here is off, so 1, I. My blue one here should be on, so that's 0, I. And my orange one here should be off, 1, I. Okay. Now, I'm going to pick my red one, And just like we did before, I'm going to go to Channel, Extrapolation Mode, Make Cyclic. And I'm going to do that for each of these. Channel, Extrapolation Mode, Make Cyclic. I hope I've done this right. Okay. Let's put it to the test. Perfect. All right, so let's back off and take a look at both. Excellent. Now, if you really want to go hog wild, you can also animate the what I call the 5 white bulbs. Although I've got my top ones yellow just to make them a little different than my normal hero model. In any case, I'm going to render out an animation, a really dull animation that just shows the front of the ship, and then I'll come back when that's done. I like to imitate particular scenes, so I'm going to do this shot kind of like the beginning of the Immunity Syndrome, which I happen to like. All right, so that's not so bad. See a little bit of both warp engines. We hardly ever saw them both at the same time. This is going to sound stupid, but just to prove, I had an incident earlier in the year where somebody didn't believe that my animations were my animations. So here is one frame of my animation for the warp engine test being rendered out. I'm doing this at DVD resolution. Now, I tend to like to do these at Blu-ray, but I kind of have a deadline tonight. I've got to get done in a certain amount of time, and even a 3-second animation where we're just pushing slowly in on the ship and looking at the warp engines. You can barely see the port one, but you can definitely see the starboard one. Is going to take, well, it's about a minute a frame, a little less, and 90 frames, so 90 minutes. That's an hour and a half right there. So in order to get this done, I've just got to push forward in a fairly quick manner, and I don't want it to look like garbage. So I'm doing DVD resolution. I'm doing it about 500 samples per image. Although when I when I like to do something for real, so to speak, when I'm trying to produce a finalized animation, I'll bump up the samples to at least 1,000, if not 1,200 or so, in order to make everything look a little smoother, a little more realistic. But you're seeing this as it's being assembled one frame at a time. It's painfully slowly, even at fairly low resolution, with just the one model, with very little going on, tiny camera movement and flickering lights and spinning warp blades. In any case, you've actually seen several frames being rendered one at a time as I'm discussing what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. All right, I'll come back when it's all done. Okay, I finished rendering out my movie. I did it at DVD resolution, so it was fairly quick. The whole thing took about an hour and a half. And here's what it looks like. I made a couple of mistakes, but so here's the Enterprise. You can see the blades are spinning. I might actually do them a little faster next time. And the lights behind the blades are blinking. So, I mean, not bad. But Blender, in an attempt to make images look more real, tends to apply a film grain. But what you might notice is the film grain isn't moving. My Enterprise, it looks like you're holding up one clear piece of film with some film grain on it, and you're watching the Enterprise move in the back. So we'll put an end to that. All right, I remember it's here under the render settings. So, oh, it's right here, right in front of me. Gosh darn it. Sampling. All right, so here under render settings, scroll down to the bottom. And if it's closed, expand sampling here. And seed is actually what we want. So go back to the beginning of our animation here. And we can, but what's happening is seed is at 0 throughout my entire animation. What we want is actually completely randomized numbers. So I'm going to go to, well, 0 is actually fine to start with. I'm going to hover over it and I'm going to hit I. Now it's animated, at least for the first frame, right? So if we do our control left shift twice and we get back to our animation area here, where we normally, change our key or channel, hit N like Navajo and bring up some more options. But because we are animating our seed, we've got, seed right there. We're going to want to change something here. Let's go to modifiers, add a modifier, and pick generator. And I think if you just leave it at default, what'll happen is this generator here will take whatever the seed value is you selected and it'll multiply it by the frame number. Let's put that to the test. So let's go back here. Here's our seed. It's at 1 now instead of 0 because 1 times 1 is 1. So if I move to the second frame, this is different now. And this will keep changing, giving you randomized noise throughout your whole animation, make it a lot more believable than what I did. In any case, you saw that we had our blades spinning, we had our lights flashing, and I added in a simple camera motion, and it didn't look too bad. Now with the randomized noise, it'll look a little more realistic. And of course, when I put it all together here, so now that I've done that work, I'm going to file, save. And then when you render out a movie, since I rendered out individual PNG images, right? I turned off RGBA and I turned off transparency right here. I unchecked that. I'm going to put it back on for now. And I'm going to switch back to RGBA and save that for my whatever I do next. But that way I'll get a transparent background. I could add stars or whatever I want. So file, save, and then I'm going to do new 7.5. Not that that's necessary. AA to select everything. Oh, here. Why tell you? Why not show you? Right? Okay. So A to select everything here. X to delete it all. I don't need it. I'm going to go control left mouse click. I'm going to tell it to use nodes, and I get this just as a quick rehash. I'm going to delete this because I'm not rendering anything. I'm going to shift A and add input movie clip. Right? We're going to make this real simple. We're not going to have any effects. Open. I'm going to go to where I made my movies. Let's see. So that would be up F1 and blinking animation. Hey, hooray. Select all 90 of my frames. Right, now I'm going to want to come over here and make sure that this is TV, because I rendered mine out as TVNTSC 4:3. So that's fine, but I only had 90 frames. And I want this to be 10 and 10 for now, because I'm not going to write it to a DVD. We're just gonna see it. In this particular case, RGB. And if I go back out here, okay, good. So now, if I'm sorry, for output, pick someplace where you want all your images to go. So for me, I have the spot here that I used. I'm gonna go up one and make I'm gonna no probably about it. I'm gonna make a new version of this, and it'll have, if I was to re-render it, I would get random noise making it look a little more realistic instead of that one noise being applied to every image. Anyway, that's not going to affect this. Then I would just hit animation, and because I've already rendered out the sequence, it renders the movie fairly quickly, except of course I did it as PNG again, which is incredibly stupid. I'm going to go back here to PNG, pick FMPEG, and let's go rename that. So instead of PNG, MPEG is MPG. It's still going to change that, but alright, and then if I do it again, animation, I'll get an animated movie out of it. And it's the exact same movie you saw before. Literally frame for frame. Exactly the same. If I bring up my VLC, here's my animation, and I've still got my noise because I haven't gone back and re-rendered it, but you can see how I've turned out a sequence. Alright guys, you put in a lot of work, good job, and don't forget to save your progress, and I will talk to you later.